Good morning, everybody. It's great to see so many people here after the exertions of the night before. So bright and early and bright and bushy tail as well, right? So what I might ask you to do, right, is, especially if you're kind of at the back, maybe just push in a seat or two, just so those people who are coming late will feel that they can come in and have a seat at the end without having to come down in front and announce it, that last extra pint, maybe. Okay. So I'm delighted this morning to welcome Dr. Barry Sutherland, who's a visual artist and an educator based in Derry, London, Derry. Originally from Scotland, Barry was awarded a PhD in art practice in 2012 from DAT for her thesis on issues of visibility, photography and conflict in landscapes shaped by political forces. She had previously completed an MFA at the University of Ulster in Belfast in 1986 and worked in the Arts and Culture departments of Strathclyde region and also in Glasgow City Council. She was a founding member of the artist group Not in Kansas. I love that. That's one of my favourite things to say, not Kansas anymore. Right? And Barry was the director of Art Link in Donegal and currently a board member of Boyd Contemporary Art Gallery in the city. Barry is the community engagement coordinator on the Crows and the Wire project. And that title alone really drew me in, right? And not to mention the other aspect of the title, which is this idea of narratives of the unheard. This presentation today speaks to a lot of the things that sometimes digital humanities is, I suppose, castigated for, which are this idea of being, democratizing or kind of revolutionary. And I think that certainly in terms of art practice, this work certainly is all of that. It's a verbal art centre project funded by the FEUPB Piece 3, which is a bit like the PRTLI 5 in being one of those acronyms that nobody's, well, I'm not sure of what exactly it means, right? Under the strand of dealing with and acknowledging the past. So the project has creatively explored the transition of the RUC to the Police Service of Northern Ireland, the PSNI, from the perspectives and impacts upon those most directly affected, the rank and file officer and their families. And it has an ethos of purposeful storytelling key to the project, where previously unheard voices in the cultural space can be spoken, heard and responded to by others affected by the themes. So it is my pleasure this morning to welcome Barry Sutherland to DAH PhD Institute second day.
Thank you, Orla, for your introduction, and thank you also to Sharon Webb for her invitation to speak to you all this morning. We really appreciate getting out and about and talking about the project. This is my second time this week, Belfast earlier this week, so it's great to come to the other end of the country and speak to you about Crows and Wire. So before speaking about the app that we've just produced, the Crows and Wire app that we've produced for iPad and tablet specifically, I'll begin by telling you a little about the Verbal Arts Centre, what we do, and setting the app in context of the overall Crows and Wire project and how we hope that it will function as a specific legacy of the project, which will formally end in December 2014. There's also some project publicity materials that you're welcome to help yourself to at the end, advertising the app, and also our symposium, which is coming up next month. The Verbal Arts Centre is based in Derry, Londonderry, Northern Ireland, with a remit that extends across the city and beyond, throughout Northern Ireland and into the border counties and the Republic of Ireland. We work with project partners also in the UK and in Europe. Since its inception in 1992, the mission of the Centre has been the promotion of the language arts, the celebration of both commonality and diversity, the development of knowledge, understanding and excellence in the creation, performance and critical practice across the verbal art forms. So spoken, written, listened to, published, illustrated and Crows and Wire performed word. Our mission statement is short. Through publishing, creative learning, community-based training, the Verbal Arts Centre strives to provide everyone, regardless of age, background or ability, with the opportunities, skills and resources to tell their story using creative means and to experience and engage with the story of others. So communication, conversations are at the heart of all our activities. We're a registered educational charity. and we're housing a former First Dairy-Free Presbyterian primary school, a listed building that was one of the first lottery capital refurbishments in the early 1990s. It's also the only place other than Stormont that the full Northern Ireland executive have met. Berber Arts Centre is uniquely placed on the city's historic 400-year-old walls, famous or infamous for withstanding the siege of Derry in 1640. Although a beautifully restored historic building, we're actually situated on the interface between the Protestant estate, which is the only residential, between Fountain Estate, it's the only Protestant residential area remaining in the city side, and the Bog side, predominantly a nationalist residential area where the events of Bloody Sunday took place during the Troubles. In practice, the Education Centre is our main focus, with programmes engaging formal and informal education, nurseries and schools, including GCSE and A-level journalism courses and third-level colleges. Our partners include local councils, the health service, social care services, residential homes, prisons, community and arts and cultural centres. We work in collaboration with groups and individual writers, artists, musicians and poets, and with other arts and organisations, arts and community organisations across Northern Ireland on cross-border programmes. Programmes range from specialist interest book and writing festivals, the promotion and publishing of new writing, public, community and literary events, masterclasses and seminars. Recent ongoing projects as well as Crows on the Wire include the Reading Rooms programme, Dissipate Gravity, and the celebration of the work of the poet Seamus Heaney called On Home Ground. It's a major literary festival taking place in Fermanagh later this month, actually the 14th that opens in Fermanagh. Our main funders are Arts Council of Northern Ireland, together with other statutory organisations such as Derry City Council and the SEUPB Peace 3 programme, as mentioned by Orla. I should say the SEUPB is a special European Union programmes body, and the Peace programme is European monies that have been directed towards Northern Ireland and the border counties for a number of years, aimed at continuing peace and reconciliation efforts as part of the post-conflict situation. We also raise project and trust funding for a series of ongoing and new projects. Again, as Orla mentioned, through the promotion and use of the language arts, we have an ethos of purposeful storytelling that involves paying particular attention to the stories of the overlooked or the unheard. These are the lesser known narratives, those which have not yet had the opportunity to be heard in the cultural space. Crucially, these are stories which most effectively challenge our perceptions and assumptions, the previously unheard stories that are sometimes both difficult to tell and to hear. In a Northern Ireland context, some of the reasons for stories being unheard, there's a number of reasons. From a culture of fear and unfamiliarity, including direct threats and concerns about personal security in the case of former state personnel, to a cultural perspective which mitigates against the practices of storytelling and regards it as tradition which has more currency for one community perhaps than the other. For example, this came up in the SUPB conference in Belfast on Tuesday of this week. There's an underrepresentation from the PUL community, the Protestant Unionist Loyalist community, and a kind of lack of cultural confidence, which is part of the kind of distancing from the culture of storytelling. It's perceived as perhaps being more to do with the CNR, Catholic Nationalist Republican community, and consequently elements of the PUL community have some the lowest levels of literacy and educational attainment, statistically, particularly Protestant boys from economically deprived backgrounds. So Crows on the Wire. Crows on the Wire is an example of this particular purposeful storytelling ethos. And it's a 2-year funded project based around a new theatrical production written by the playwright Jonathan Burgess and commissioned by the Berber Arts Centre. Funded by EU monies, as I mentioned, the Peace 3 programme under the strand dealing with and acknowledging the past. The project is a powerful, challenging and sensitive work that creatively explores a highly significant aspect of recent Northern Ireland political, civic and human history. The Crows on the Wire script and performance explores the transition of the Royal Ulster Constabulary to the Police Service of Northern Ireland from the perspective of those most directly involved and impacted, the rank and file officers and their families. Set in a police station locker room, the production is an intense 90-minute dramatisation of the actual transition of the RUC to PSNI on the night of 3rd of November 2001. We toured the performance across Northern Ireland and the border counties in November 2013, last year. giving 20 free of charge performances, including 4 exclusively for schools, accompanied by post-performance discussions between an invited panel and the audiences. Prior to the tour, an engagement programme using drama facilitators for schools and community groups took place across Northern Ireland in September and October. To give you a sense of the political and civic background to the work, the transition came about as a result of the pattern reforms and was implemented as part of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, the broad aim of which was to create a police service that was both representative and acceptable across all the communities of Northern Ireland. There was a number of recommendations, quite a few, I'll shorten them, which included a new name and identity, the Police Service of Northern Ireland, targets to increase the numbers of Roman Catholic and ethnic minority police officers, a better gender balance, more women, and the creation of regionally based policing boards to ensure wide cultural representation from across all local communities. As the RUC were effectively disbanded, at the same time the force had collectively honored the George Cross in recognition of their service and sacrifice during the years of the Troubles. In the 25 years since 1969 and 1994, so from the generally acknowledged start date of the Troubles to the date of the IRA ceasefire, 20 years anniversary this week, that preceded the current peace process, 195 RUC and 101 RUC reserve members were killed and over 8,000 injured during that time, and of course a number since. The RUC George Cross Foundation is now an organisation which exists to honour the service of former RUC officers and their families, and this includes a museum and memorial garden in Belfast. One of the trustees, Roger McCallum, is a member of our steering group. So this change was a complex and problematic time for many of the officers and their families, with an award for gallantry on one hand and the loss of their identity on another. So I'm going to show you our first video. I'm going to show you 3 short videos this morning, including one about the production of the app, and then also I will come to the app itself. And I would also say this is its very first public showing. I'm delighted to have it here this morning. It will be launched officially on the 15th of this month at the Verbal Arts Centre. So this first video was created in order to promote the performance themes and subjects before the tour took place, and features the writer Jonathan Burgess speaking about his motivations for the work, and 2 members of our steering group, Roger McCallum, as we've mentioned, RUC George Cross, and Lawrence McKeown, former IRA prisoner and hunger striker. And it's a short little video, about 5 minutes long. I'm going to try and turn the lights down, but perhaps that won't. Let's see.
The motivation for Cruising the Wire was basically I wanted to tell a story which I felt hadn't been told. The date in question, and with the play sense of 3rd November 2001, that's 12 years ago now. The story is yet to be told, kind of the rank of private officers and how they felt.
I remember when I joined the RUC in 1976, there was no doubt at all that it was an organisation not only involved with policing but also with protecting the state.
I believe that I was fighting for my community, the right of that community to raise itself above the parapet and be treated as first-class citizens.
I remember being on escort patrol once with some explosives officers heading out to the scene of a quarry, and on the way out there the road in front of us was blown up by an explosion at the side of the road by a bomb that had been placed there presumably the night before. Luckily enough nobody was injured on that particular occasion, but it just brought home to me, particularly whenever the gravel, the stones and all are showering down around you, the dangers that there are in being a police officer in Northern Ireland at that particular time.
Well, I ended up going to prison when I was just almost 20. I was charged with causing explosions in Ralston Berlin with an attack on an RUC patrol in July 1976. As I say, one of the RUC officers on it was injured, the driver, and I was sentenced to life in prison about 9 months later.
And it was difficult sometimes for police officers to live within the communities. You had to take certain precautions. For example, you could not hang your washing out on the line for fear it might draw attention to the fact that a police officer lived in that particular location. you would have to check underneath your car every day that was parked outside your house in case somebody had placed an undercar booby-trap there during the night. And it's just a random fact that I'm able to, I suppose, sit here and talk to you today, as opposed to maybe being somebody that's memorialised in the Garden of Remembrance.
I think I was prepared to die for IRA as well as take life for it. I think I suppose proven whenever I ended up in prison. I ended up in the protest and the hunger strike in 1981. I was on the hunger strike for 7 days and in comas in some sense for me, dying, but I'm still here to tell the tale. Looking back on my life and actions, I think there's very little I would regret, certainly not in terms of the politics and getting involved in IRA. I think I've had the same to do over again when this we do it. I think we're in a different situation today. Part I think today is about dealing with now the legacy of the conflict. I think you can only deal with that in a credible way if you actually stand up with politics and do that.
And I guess you have to be in the context of where that person's grown up or what that person has experienced before you can really say that was a good decision or that was a bad decision. Ultimately, you have to live with the consequences of your decision. As Darwin says, it's not the most intelligent nor the strongest of the species that survives. It is the one that is most adaptable to change. Certainly, change was something which stuck in a lot of our throats at that time. We felt that we were being, if you like, hung out to dry by the politicians to try and move things forward in this country. I'm a great believer in moving things forward, and I think that change does have to happen. But that does not diminish the fact that a lot of us felt betrayed by the government in those days.
And I have great sympathy for the RUC and great sympathy for what happened over the period of the Troubles, and really I want them to tell that story and facilitate people and tell their story. I know there were a lot of people who felt very bad and very raw about it. I still know that there are people who feel that way about it and feel a sense of betrayal by the political process. It's important to tell this story purely through a sense of inclusivity. There's no point excluding the story, I think, because it's a difficult story, because it's a hard story for people to tell and a hard story for people to hear, doesn't make it any less valid.
So I have to make sure that the logos come up. And I can go on to the next one. So I'll just line up the next one and get up shortly.
Could you take that just a little?
I could if I knew how.
I'll do it there. Could you just go
Let's turn the lights off.
just over here? Actually, it's up as far as it's going to go. Oh, because you can put it up on your own. Maybe you can bring it up over there.
Yeah, I can just
Scoot it up there. Just with the speakers.
Okay. I'll just see the lights down low for a minute. Is that okay for the, yeah? Before we go on to the next one. So the performance, which I'm going to show you some clips from now, acted as a powerful catalyst for the dialogue which was generated in response. The whole aim of the project is to engage a wide range of audiences from the themes, from the police family to ex-prisoner networks, from young people with a limited knowledge of the RUC, which is where the app comes in, to former security service personnel. The steering group members, you've seen two of them there, they were at the core of the project. They were also at the heart of the post-performance discussions that took place after 16 of the performances. The discussions were an opportunity for the audience to engage in dialogue immediately about the themes of the play following a performance with members of the panel. And they were invited from organisations such as Phoenix Organisation Northern Ireland, which caters for ex-services personnel, the RUC George Cross Foundation, Question Harmony Network, working for Republican ex-prisoners and their families, the PSNI, serving police officers, Queen's University Belfast, Peace and Reconciliation organisations, and the discussions were moderated by local journalists and editors to each area. Interestingly, there was an equal balance of members of Coistra and current and former police officers. So now I'm just going to show you the second short film, which is clips from the performance and clips from the discussions. We generally show them together to underscore the significance of the discussions alongside the performance, because they do work hand in hand for the purposes of the project. So again, it's another short film. It's 4.13 seconds. So it's a composite from some of the performances, and you'll hear from some of the discussions which we audio recorded, a number of them. And what's really significant about the views that you hear expressed is that they are about different perceptions, different experiences. They're not about achieving consensus, but they are about expressing with confidence your particular narrative within the shared space of a cultural project. So I shall show you this, and then we'll move on to the app. Hopefully it's loud enough.
I could have been home and dry. I feel guilty just thinking about it now. I don't know what to say.
I've been brought up in my case in a security forces family, or my kids are brought up in a security forces family, would have been told you can't go on that school trip because it's going to a certain place, you can't bring certain people home or whatever because they'll see uniforms or that. You can't get into the car until it's driven down the road to make sure it doesn't blow up.
It's fair to say that I saw the back seat of a police car a few times before I got to sit in the front. It is nice to be around you, see such a story.
A number of years ago, we wouldn't have had this interaction, and it was interesting that in Cultureland, up in the heart of Derry, Londonderry, and you have a whole lineup of places. And in Cultureland, which is an Irish language centre, that wouldn't have happened a few years ago, so it was really interesting interaction. The respect. I had expected people to come in and challenge and be quite antagonistic towards the place who were at the front.
What did you think, Jack, on this night of all nights? What did you think?
Nothing.
You know, people talk about police stations, but in nationalist areas we talk about police barracks, and that we don't think of it as being, or we didn't think of police stations as any sort of a community facility or service. We would have a very different experience and a very different perspective to policing than what people down here would have, or people within the unionist community would have had.
Yeah, Julie's a different girl now. But if it hadn't been for that WPC, I mean, nobody in our house knew what to do. But she did her best for her. She made sure that Julie got all the help she could. I guess I never saw the healers like that before.
And for me, really, the human aspect of it was the most important piece of this. The personalising of policing was really, really important. Because when we put on the uniform, I think we are still people. And the more we can personalise policing and allow you folks to see the human side of policing, the benefits of our society.
Try and turn the lights on. Feeling.
It's still away.
Yeah, that one. Better. So, how did we go from all this to the app? The Crows Noir app has been created by digital animation company Black North, based on the script by Jonathan Burgess, and as I mentioned, launched on the 15th of this month as part of the Culture Tech programme in the city, after which it will be freely available to download from iTunes and Google Play. It's been created primarily as a unique and innovative digital portal to this particular story, and as an educational resource for young people studying citizenship and history in Key Stages 3 and 4 in the Northern Ireland curriculum. The rationale for the app as part of the overall Crows Noir project has been much debated and discussed in our team during last year, 2013, and the early months of 2014, when in a sense the discussions around the best form and function of the app had to be resolved before the work went to tender and the commission was awarded. As it turned out, the tendering process helped to kind of resolve some of the issues we were having about whether we should have the safety net of a hard copy or not, which we decided not to have. The project is intended to contain an archive, a form of legacy that's active and engaged rather than functioning as a passive repository for the elements of the project, and one which brings the historical elements of the story into the contemporary present and future. We see the involvement and engagement with young people through education and other outlets as being one of the best ways in creating an active, robust legacy of the project, and that's as an organisation who works on an ongoing basis with educational sources. We've produced many educational packs and resources over the years, as do schools, many of which end up gathering dust on a shelf, their content and form quickly obsolete. As this is a historical narrative, an aspect from the history of the Troubles, the majority of young people in Northern Ireland aged 15 to 16 were completely unaware of. The likelihood of this happening to a Crows Noir educational resource, if produced in the traditional hard copy format, was highly likely. In deciding to build an app to both tell the story and to act as a portal to the teachers' resources and the pupils' activities, we are creating a context for a challenging, contested historical narrative to be explored within a progressive, forward-looking, entirely digital format. As I mentioned, there is no safety backup of a paper copy. The tender process was quite a protracted business, which kind of reflected the various formats of the educational resources and how these were to be communicated to prospective tenderees. For example, the first circulation of the tender was in February-March 2014, and it was primarily for an illustrator who was experienced in both digital and hard copy formats, as we at that stage had not quite relinquished the idea of the hard copy graphic novel. So as we were not entirely resolved, hence the tender was not constructed perhaps in such a way as to elicit the best responses, and in a sense the brief for the work became more defined through the tender process, and the responses received to a number of rounds issued from the original tender. So as a result, the final tender was much more specific and detailed, both in terms of how we wanted the app to have a dual function, both as a resource for educational purposes, whilst creating a really strong identity as a digital graphic novel that could be read and accessed widely through the usual outlets. As a team, we had also developed an increased and better understanding of what was out there already in the market, and who the producers were, and how we wanted the Crows Noir app to function. Previous tenders were advertised through community and cultural sources, which didn't seem to bring out the attention of the cutting-edge companies that we hoped to attract. So the final tender was advertised in the Belfast Telegraph, which is our biggest daily newspaper, and through the website also. We had a much higher quality of response, including bids from Glasgow and London and from Black North and Belfast, whose work we were already aware of and who were awarded the commission in May 2014. Our target audience is schools and young people. As mentioned, there's leaflets here if anybody's interested in having a look. The leaflet has been posted to all 219 post-primary schools in Northern Ireland and to 29 schools in Donegal, as one of the border counties whose schools have already participated in the programme. The objective is to make the resource accessible and easily uploadable for teachers of Key Stage 3 and 4 and transition year in local and global citizenship and history. The resource is intended to function and be relevant beyond the story of the RUC as explored in the script, and to operate more broadly as an aid to the teaching of controversial issues in schools. Within the novel there are 6 chapters, each of which will act as a stimulus for young people to conduct individual and group research, discuss the topics and groundwork, and hopefully allow the teachers to use the resource as a useful aid to their work on the curriculum. As the educational resource work resulting in the 6 chapters of pupils' activities and the accompanying teachers' notes have all been commissioned from and devised by Dr Alan Mhairi, a former teacher and specialist in citizenship and a member of the Northern Ireland Curriculum Education Authority. That work's been ongoing since the project started, which allowed Alan to attend a number of performances and discussions. So his work in the resource for schools has been fully informed by the cultural activity of the project as well as by the educational requirements. I've got a small paragraph here on logistics. The app has been created in Unity, 2D and 3D games engine program. The illustrations have been drawn in Photoshop, and the 3D effects in the locker room through Soft Image, a content creation program. The illustration and 3D effects have been combined in Unity, as have the educational resources, which were made into JPEGs and coded with JScript. Currently the app is going through the registration process for Apple Store and Google+. So I'm going to show you a short piece on the production of the app, and then we'll go to the app itself. I'll switch it around and link it up. I won't go through it completely, but perhaps I'll go to a chapter and show you how it works with the teachers' resources and the pupils' activities.
Anyway, long story short, one night she ends up at this party. She gets jumped by 2 fellows on the way home. Just like that. Just 10 minutes of madness and her whole world falls in on top of her.